All right, welcome to another edition of the Casual Highlight, where we strive to educate, inform, and inspire while having a casual conversation about sports. And today I got Preston Guy from TigerBait.com. Now, as you all remember, I interviewed him on the podcast, the Casual Highlight, back in early part of the pandemic, back in 2020. And he's been covering LSU for a little bit now. And I had to get Preston on the show today to talk a little bit more about this LSU coaching search because and for him to educate us as to what's going on. So, Preston, happy birthday to you, man, and what's going on?
Thank you, man. The 30s have been they've been good so far to me. So we're about 2 days in. So trying to keep it as good as the 20s were for me.
Come on, welcome. Let me say that. Welcome to the 30s, my friend. man, first things first, Doc. This LSU job is very unique.
Yeah.
It's unusual, man. What is it about LSU being a head coach, and why is it one of the top jobs to have in the country?
Well, and that's a very loaded question. So thank you for asking about that. I actually did a whole episode on my podcast, which, by the way, y'all can check out tigerbait.com if y'all want to check me out every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. But I did a whole episode, and I talked to a national sports writer of Sports Illustrated, Ross Dellinger. And, a lot of the local media here, we've got this opinion that it's an outstanding job. LSU is a top 5 job, and it's elevated. I thought it was a top 5 job 5 years ago when Les Miles got fired. And I was like, dude, look at the recruiting for this. Well, now that profile has elevated to where not only the local guys get it, the national guys get it. Ross Dellinger agreed it was a top 5 job. Of course, College Football Game Day, the biggest media show out there in all of college football, all of those guys raved for about 5 minutes about how outstanding this LSU job is. And a lot of people, especially some Oklahoma fans, don't really get it. And we'll touch more on Oklahoma fans later. But LSU, there's only 3 jobs I see that I would consider better than LSU. And one of them I'd love to see 5 years after their current guy retires. Of course, that is Alabama. And Alabama has historically been a giant. I mean, you go back to any decade, it's hard to pick a decade where they haven't won a championship. And now they don't have the natural resources that the next 3 programs do. That's Georgia, Ohio State, and LSU. I think Ohio State would be number 2, then Georgia, then LSU, in my opinion. Now, a little bit of putting Georgia so high is disrespectful to Georgia Tech, because the reason why LSU and Ohio State are so high is because they're in talent-rich states with no in-state competition. You have to drive 300 miles from LSU to find a Power 5 program, because you even look at the Mississippi schools, which, they're not necessarily like big Auburn, Alabama traditional powerhouses, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. They might beat you for some Mississippi kids, but I don't necessarily see them coming into Louisiana. But those schools are both in North Mississippi. So geographically, so many recruits have to drive by your campus at LSU to find another Power 5 school. By the way, you go the other direction, the closest Power 5 school is Houston. And is Houston really coming into LSU? So really the closest geographical school that is coming in and beating you for recruits, you're really talking about Texas, the University of Texas, or Alabama. So that's a nice little drive where you just own this area of recruiting. So how talented are the recruits that want to come to LSU? Let's put it like this. In the last 20 years, that's kind of what I'm honing in here, because LSU really wasn't the program that it solidified itself as until the last 20 years. LSU has had 87 players from Louisiana or played high school football in Louisiana or were born in Louisiana, some sort of Louisiana tie, go on to play for LSU and get drafted in the NFL. That by itself would be the 15th highest of any school in the country. Now, LSU is 3rd once you throw in the out-of-state guys, but by itself, Louisiana talent, just the guys coming to LSU, which, by the way, there's a bunch more players from Louisiana, but they went elsewhere for whatever reason. But typically it's not. 12 out of 15 guys LSU wants, they're going to get every single year. That's just statistically what we've seen since Nick Saban came to town, outside of a handful of years. Now, Nick Saban will pluck one every once in a while. Sometimes a guy gets away, but LSU pretty much gets what they want. And I talk to tons of recruits. I'm like, man, let's be honest. did you grow up an LSU fan? And they'll be, dude, I got LSU stuff on all four walls around me right now. I've heard that multiple occasions. So it's a very talent-rich state that makes, like, you look at guys like Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. Is he tapped out? Has he done the most he can do at Oklahoma? Is he hit a ceiling where he could dominate the Big 12, but Oklahoma can't pull the recruits that you need to compete in the playoffs? Well, that won't be a problem at LSU, and everyone knows it. Everyone knows. I mean, and the fact that the last three coaches have all won championships, that's a statement about the program, not the coach, the program itself. And 2 out of 3 of those guys ended up getting asked to leave, and weren't really highly regarded as football minds. And Ed Ogeron and Les Miles, of course, Nick Saban is highly regarded. But since then, 2 average, mediocre, whatever you want to call them, coaches have won championships at LSU. And that's saying something. That's a statement. In fact, only a handful of programs have done that. I think only 4 other programs have ever done that. And the last one to do it would be the U in the 90s through 70s.
Yes.
So you have to go back, and then there's a bunch of schools like Yale in there who just went through 3 coaches in 3 years in the 1900s and won 3 championships. Does that count? You tell me. Okay, so there's all these factors in place, so much success, so much talent. The resources are up there with anybody. I think once you get to top 20, top 15 schools, like are the resources, like stadium and all that good stuff, is it really that much different from Oregon to Alabama, LSU? Not really. I mean, they have as much money as they want. And it shows, and their football programs are elite, and they have great big stadiums and big fancy locker rooms. And, all those top 20 schools are going to have it. And certainly LSU has that. LSU also has the second longest streak of wins in the country, which is highly underrated, which is in peril this year, actually. It only took about 17 players getting hurt on the team and a subpar coaching staff to get him there. But even with so many players hurt, LSU's still competing in these SEC games. Of course, the last 2 weeks came down to the very wire against Arkansas and Alabama. And if 1 or 2 plays goes differently, we're talking about this team 6-4 right now. So, of course, they didn't. That's the way the cookie crumbles in the SEC. So they're 4-6, but they have the second longest streak of winning seasons, is what I call them. A lot of people call me out. Oh, they went 5-5 last year. Look, if you're above 500, I'm calling it a winning season. That's what most people define it as, or not losing season. Okay. So that goes all the way back to 2000. Of course, the longest streak in the country is Oklahoma. But then you throw in third most drafted players LSU does have, the Louisiana talent guys who would rank 15th in the country by themselves, LSU's long streak of winning seasons, and 3 straight coaches that have won championships. I mean, if you're in the know and you've actually done your homework, you're not going to find 5 better jobs than that. I mean, you really cannot. I mean, look, Oklahoma's got a longer win streak, but they hadn't had 3 straight coaches win championships. LSU's won 3 championships since their last one. Okay. You're going to find a lot of good jobs like that. And I'm picking on Oklahoma because they're top of mind, but there's a lot of jobs like that. Tennessee, USC is the one that people have brought up, and you just don't have those accolades that LSU does across the board. So once you do your homework, you realize that LSU in a lot of ways is the sleeping giant of college football.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that. I didn't even realize the radius you was talking about. As far as Houston, that's 5 hours toward the west, and then you go toward the east.
I mean, those schools are both north Mississippi.
North Mississippi, right? Yeah, you said power. Keyword Power 5.
Power 5, right? Because look, Southern Miss ain't coming in here and beating you out.
Right.
ULL, love them. They're not going to beat you out for a coach or a recruit anytime.
Right.
If ULL has a kid committed, it's LSU's if they want them. It's just that's just the way things work. Tulane, I mean, all of these programs aren't bad programs, but the realistic, it's not only that they aren't Power 5, it's that LSU is top tier Power 5.
Yes.
So like I said earlier, a little bit of disrespect to Georgia Tech. I just, especially with that offensive system being so different, I don't really see them beating Georgia for an in-state recruit. I mean, maybe, but I mean, still, there's an obscene amount of talent Georgia can pick from, and it shows.
But that hasn't been like that in years with Georgia and Georgia Tech. Like I'm thinking in the last 20 years since Mark
Yeah.
Ripp was there, the former coach, but before.
Yeah. When a lot of people don't really
Yeah.
respect Mark Richt as a coach, look what he did at Miami.
Yes.
You know, I mean, a lot of people look at him and say he was an average coach that was carried by a great program. Mark Richt and Les Miles showed a lot of parallels.
Yes. Yes. But I would give the edge offensively, as far as an offensive mind, in my opinion, to Mark Ripp a little bit more, over less.
Right.
But
look, Georgia's the one where when I say I think it's a better job, people do kind of give me a little bit of trash. But I mean, look, I mean, you could sit here and I'd be like, all right, screw it. LSU's the better job. I mean, they're right. They're pretty close.
Yeah. Most definitely, man. Yeah, you educating us right now, Doc. You educating us on that one. So now, as has been documented, Scott Woodward, I've been doing some research on your AD, and he has made some huge hires. Chris Peterson, Kim Mulkey, Jumbo Fisher, Buzz Williams. What qualities for this LSU job is he looking for the next person for LSU football?
So the main thing is name recognition. He wants a big name, okay? And I think he kind of recognizes that win or lose, a big name puts butts in seats. You know, because a lot of those hires maybe didn't pan out to the hype. You can argue Jimbo might have. Buzz Williams didn't pan out, but that had, you know, off the court stuff involved in there. And, you know, you can argue Chris Peterson didn't sustain the level of success, but he certainly elevated, you know, a program that was in bad position with Steve Sarkisian. But he also hired Steve Sarkisian at Washington, who took that program. I mean, that was a program in dire position. I mean, remember, not too long ago, Washington had a winless season with Jake Locker. First round draft pick. Now he got hurt that year, but I mean, you get what I'm saying. They didn't win a game with him in there either. So you got to understand that, you know, these have been big profile hires, and that's what he's going to go for, is the high profile. So that's what he's looking for, criteria-wise, that is the consistent pattern. He's not going to be afraid to offer a lofty contract, and he's kind of brilliant with the way he offers contracts, because it's sticker shock at first, but the way these markets move, you're locked in for a long period of time. In 5 years, guess what? Jimbo Fisher's like the 8th highest paid coach now. It's nothing remarkable. He's got 5 years left, just like everybody else. He's got 5 years left, making about $7 million a year, just like every other top kid. It works itself out. You're just banking on this coach having a successful first 5 years. That's all you're doing. And if you're hiring a name like that, you kind of double down and say, okay, yeah. But like in 1 or 2 years, if Jimbo Fisher starts struggling on a level that's unacceptable, guess what? You can fire him, and you're in the same position LSU is firing Ed Ogeron this year. You know, like it's not all that different, although his is 100%, 100% covered. So you are talking about probably a figure about 30 instead of 17, but you get my point. Probably closer to 35 if I did the exact math, but you know, 2 years, that's a lot of money, but A&M can cover it, and that's what schools do when they hire big name coaches and they don't work out. They get lots of money. LSU's paying $17 million to Ogeron right now. That's part of being an elite program, is willing to cut that check. So LSU will be looking for a big name guy, a splash hire, and the names are kind of odd. You know, early on it was like Lane Kiffin. That's all you heard. You know, Mel Tucker. Now Mel Tucker is expected to, has not, no pen to paper, but they're in pretty, you know, serious talks about signing an extension with Michigan State, which wouldn't put pen to paper unless he wanted to do it with programs interested in him. So we'll see about that. So, but Mel Tucker, Lane Kiffin, Billy Napier at ULL. Remember I teased about, you know, taking your coach. If LSU wants Billy Napier, Napier will come. But the thing that did not sit right with me on all of these names, if Woodward were to hire any of those guys, it would be the most underwhelming hire of his career. Does he do that with the sport he cares about most, football, at his alma mater, LSU? After firing a championship coach 21 months later, that don't sit right with me. It does not sit right with me at all that he would underwhelm with this hire No, I think if you fired that coach in that position after, I mean, dude, that was 21 months ago.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see him doing that without a big name. And of course, sources close to the program. He's been tight-lipped. That's why this coaching search has been frustrating, because he's good at his freaking job.
That's good.
Joe Oliva leaked everything, and we had all the information.
Whew, that was messy.
It was very ugly because he's a dum-dum. That's why. So Scott Woodward is no dum-dum. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's working in the shadows quietly.
Yeah.
Scheming, and he's leaving us all in the dust. The only word, so Mike Scarborough, owner of TigerBait.com, on our post-game show this week said, here's what I'm hearing from everybody close to the program. He's telling people he knows what he's going, he knows who he's going for, and you're gonna like it. You're gonna like it. It's going to be popular. And to me, I'm trying to do some research to find out if one name that I've been pumping from the beginning is actually a front runner for this job. Because the more we go on, other guys are kind of dropping out. Mel Tucker, Jimbo Fisher kind of pulled himself out of the running a few hours ago. That was another name we heard a ton of buzz of, but he kind of disrespectfully went about it. And when coaches kind of diss the opportunity,
right,
not like say, I'm not doing it. Like, okay, I'm not doing it. Whatever. How does that really hurt you if you go on to do it? If you diss the opportunity before doing it,
right,
you kind of set yourself up for failure should you go on to do it.
Yeah.
So more names are pulling themselves out of the running, and I'm kind of trying to figure out who's the front runner, who could fit that criteria of you're gonna like it, fans are going to be excited. Who could fit that? And to me, there's one name that fits that, but we'll see.
Man, because I was, when James Franklin, Mel Tucker, I'm like, Mel Tucker would leave Michigan State after 2 years when he just did the same thing at Colorado for 1 year. I thought about the boy in Minnesota, rowed a boat.
PJ Fleck.
PJ Fleck. I was thinking about him, and I'm like, man, this is interesting, man. You brought up Lincoln Riley. Now, I think to me that would be crazy. But I've seen crazier things in, conference to conference. I'm like, you about to leave Oklahoma. Your team's about to be in the SEC.
Yeah.
How crazy would that be for him to leave LSU? Or would that be like a great move? I mean, recruiting wise, definitely would be a lot better than what you had before and facilities.
I definitely understand exactly. On the surface, it sounds insane. And that's why a lot of people have been very dismissive of it. And you kind of have to dig down deep. And I spoke with Ryan Aber, who's an AP voter for the Oklahoman. Okay. And to get some details of why he would. Now, Ryan Aber did eventually say, my gut feeling is Lincoln Riley will stay. But the whole time we're talking about these things, and he's like, yeah, that could be a reason. Yeah, no, that's a valid thing. He's recognizing these things. So first and foremost, I'll ask you, in terms of how unprecedented it is. I mean, what if I told you, a coach with Heisman Trophy quarterback who has an 850 win percentage and won a championship about 2 years ago and made the playoff another year, was leaving for another Power 5 job at a historic powerhouse team? You'd say, man, you're kind of, no, I don't know. That doesn't sound too likely. Now, all those accolades go beyond what Lincoln Riley, or the championship does for sure, goes beyond what Lincoln Riley has done. But look at Jimbo Fisher when he left Florida State. Florida State was considered a top-tier program. They've definitely fell off. My goodness, have they fell off. And he had Jameis Winston and Christian Ponder, who were first-round quarterbacks. He was consistently winning 9 or 10 games. Went undefeated 2 straight regular seasons before going to the playoff, and of course got dismantled by Oregon in the second one go round. But Jimbo was a major high profile name, and he went to Texas A&M. And who hired him? Scott
Woodward.
Is that all that much crazier? Is that all that much crazier than saying Scott Woodward may hire Lincoln Riley? Yeah. I'm not really 100% convinced it's too much of a jump beyond that. Now, as to why Lincoln Riley would, number one, Ryan Aber of the Oklahoman was telling me about the culture at OU. They pride themselves on being smarter than those dumb athletic programs, quote, dumb athletic programs, not my words, just the culture of OU. It wasn't even Ryan saying it's dumb to do it. It was quoting, message boards and the culture of OU. They're not going to overpay a coach just because. They're going to pay their coach reasonable. They take a lot of pride in it's a self-sufficient athletics department because they don't offer these stupid gaudy contracts is what they say. Woodward's not afraid to do that. So number one, Woodward will come with an offer that OU will not match. If Lincoln Riley is indeed that guy that he's talking about, that he knows he's going to hire and will not disappoint. Number two, does Lincoln Riley realize his stock's at an all-time high right now? Because he's had those playoff struggles and he's probably not going to win a championship this year, or, I don't know. I think it's going to be kind of hard where he's at to win a championship. And he's never going to be more desired. And there might not be a program to come around with quite the resources, money, and as good of a job as LSU for a while. Like we said, there's probably, three other jobs in the conversation that would be distinctly better than Oklahoma. Because I legitimately do think LSU is a distinctly better, not significant, not by a large margin, but it's absolutely a better job. And you can see why than Oklahoma. But I don't think like Oklahoma's a terrible job by any stretch. I think it's a little bit better because of what I've mentioned with recruiting and stuff. But I don't think any job is by a wide margin better than OU, because I think it's like the 7th, 6th best job in the country. So A, does he want to cash out while his stock's high? Because he's coming to the SEC and they're kind of all preparing for an extra loss or two a year. So OU is going to drop off from like a perpetual 12-1, 12-0 football team to pretty much sitting there looking at about 9-3-ish.
Yeah.
Is that kind of, and does he see the writing on the wall that, man, I've had struggle play. I'm 0-3 against SEC in the playoffs. Now I'm going to have to play them every single year. And with this rotating pod, you're not going to dodge all of them. You're not, because you're going to play every team in the SEC every other year is basically what we're looking at with these pods.
Yeah.
So you're not going to dodge them. You're going to have to take them head on. So does he decide before they leave for the SEC as early as next year, does he cash out while his stock's high and go to a place where he can get some talent? Because a lot of his defensive struggles, talking to Ryan Aber, he doesn't necessarily feel those are on Lincoln Riley or the coaches, that they just struggle to find talent, like defensive talent to come play for Oklahoma, because there's just not a lot of homegrown talent in Oklahoma. You have to go into Texas and all that. And they're kind of banking on joining the SEC will help them recruit better. But if that's what you're looking for, doesn't LSU already have that? I mean, yes, not the SEC part of that, but doesn't LSU already have the golden recruiting setup? I mean, you're not going to struggle to find those players anymore. So I could see a point where he says, okay, more money, better recruiting, unknown of joining the SEC. This might take a notch down. If I want to win a championship, I'm going to have to get more local talent. And LSU has all of that and more. All I have to do is go out of state to grab a handful of trench guys, because the state doesn't grow offensive linemen, typically speaking. But that being said, LSU also has 4 offensive linemen committed this year with no football coach, by the way. They have the 12th ranked recruiting class. No football coach at all. 14 players committed, lots of room for growth in that too, by the way. And you have the number 1 quarterback in the country committed in Walker Howard. And then you've got the number 1 quarterback next year in New Orleans by a kid by the name of Arch Manning. But you're going to have to do something different to pull him, because right now, Arch Manning doesn't want to play on the same team as Walker Howard, because they're good friends. Their dads are at least good friends, and they don't want to have to force one or the other out. So my point is just saying LSU, I mean, they've got things in place where they can build that roster up and compete pretty soon. You plug in a coach like a Lincoln Riley, who's outstanding, by the way. Before the loss this weekend, he had the highest win percentage of any coach hired at an FBS program in 100 years. People didn't know that. Yeah. People didn't know that. You have to go back to Newt Rutney at Notre Dame, hired in 1918, to find a coach with a higher win percentage at Power 5 programs. with 50 or more games, of course. So that's kind of eye opening to you.
Yeah.
And that's not just Power 5, by the way. That's all of FBS. I forgot to even mention that. The only guys with higher are the ones at FCS or below programs, like Wisconsin Whitewater type stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So to me, it's like that'd be such a grand slam hire. The makings are all there, dude. I mean, the makings, everything, the argument for why it might happen, the stars are aligned. And this last weekend, Oklahoma losing the one last piece domino that was like, wow, no, they wouldn't do that, because why would Lincoln Riley leave an undefeated playoff team? Well, Dave Aranda, former LSU DC, did them a solid this weekend and knocked the Sooners off. The 8th ranked undefeated Sooners took a loss. So if the playoff committee didn't like them at undefeated, and fans are grumbling about Lincoln Riley on message boards right now, and they're kind of not necessarily appreciating his 54-9 tenure there right now. What, does that open the door? I think the door's been open. Now, whether he steps through it or not just depends on his personal preference. Per Wikipedia, he's got a dog named Boomer and a dog named Sooner. Okay, that's hard to pull a guy. I can't find anybody to ball it at that claim. I just think that's funny. On Wikipedia, it says his dogs are named Boomer and Sooner. But that's pretty indicative that he's well entrenched in Oklahoma, if true. And I don't doubt for a second he's got a happy home there. It's just all about, man, you're 38 years old. When you gonna make your move? Do you want to win a championship? If you want to win a championship, I don't think very many people would argue outside of the state of Oklahoma that LSU would be the easier place to actually win the championship. I think LSU for sure would be the easier place to get that done.
Yeah.
Especially considering the path to the playoffs is no longer going to be easy for Oklahoma. The path to the playoffs is now going to be absurdly difficult. So that whole argument of, okay, just win your conference and make it there, and then maybe you have a chance once you make it's out. It's gone. It's gone.
Man, yeah. Yeah, that best bet was now you make it sound even better than what it was before of why Lincoln Riley would leave. Yeah. Because had they would have stayed in the Big 12, okay, maybe would have been a consideration. But now going to the SEC and you're facing these teams like LSU, Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M, getting better. Oh, by the way, Texas. Well, we don't know with Texas though. That's a whole different story. But but Georgia, Florida, when they get better, miss all these schools, man. You competing every week.
Oh yeah.
This is not no Iowa State anymore or no K-State type things. No offense to K-State fans, but yeah, this is a whole different league out here.
Yeah. No, and I don't no doubt that OU will be a good program, 10-9 wins in the SEC because they're a good football team, no doubt. No doubt. But are they beating Georgia this year? No. Are they beating OU this year? Probably. I'm sorry. Are they beating Alabama this year? Probably not. I mean, even though Alabama's a bit down, but I mean, there's so many good teams in the SEC year in and year out. And you just saw OU struggle at a Baylor team, a good Baylor team, very good Baylor team, very well coached one too, by the way, in Dave Aranda, who might be sliding up into that backup. Like maybe he's the number 2 guy now. You would think you'd want a guy with more experience than him, but maybe he's sliding in there. But yeah, I'd say the door's been open. There's an argument for why he could. There's an argument for why he should. It's up to one person. It's up to Lincoln Riley, and he's kind of a lone wolf. Will he do it?
We're just gonna have to wait and see till when the season over. Right. See what happens. We're gonna end it on this note. You are Scott Woodward, and you are the AD of LSU, and you're in his shoes right now.
Yep.
Who are you hiring as the next head coach of LSU?
Back the Brinks truck up. Do not accept no for an answer. If he says no, ask again. And do not take no for an answer until Lincoln Riley is your head football coach. That is what you do.
That's what you do.
If he absolutely turns you down, there is a strong coaching field behind him. And I feel comfortable if you were to go with a guy like Mario Cristobal at Oregon, who's been quiet. Nobody's really talking about him, off the radar, but he's quietly putting together a playoff team at Oregon. Quietly did some good things there, although he's a retread coach. He's not the mold of coach I want. I look at him as like what Ed Ogeron is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
A lineman coach, good recruiter, can build offensive line, no nonsense motivator, but like I don't want that. I want the X's and O's genius. That's what I want. I also look at guys like Luke Fickell is a guy I'd pursue hard, but from what I'm hearing, I talked to Ross Dellinger, he'd be harder to get than you might think. And he's talking playoff appearance. That might be tough to lure a guy away from a playoff team. That's one of the things people were talking about with Lincoln Riley. Well, and then Dave Aranda is a guy. I mean, he is incredibly smart, and you have to wonder how much was he quietly behind the scenes running the show. I mean, that defense certainly toned it up strong.
Yes, they did.
At the end of that championship run. How much was he to credit for that success? And so those are guys I like. Of course, there's a lot of other guys. Billy Napier is a guy I would not mind, but I take Dave Aranda over Billy Napier every single time. And you just gotta figure out who's your guy. I'm hoping they go after an X's and O's guy. But like I said, back the brink truck up. Do not take no. I think LSU fans should be lobbying this hard right now because the door's been open. Go get Lincoln. Go make it happen. That would be just monumental in terms of what it means for the LSU program.
Man. Well, you heard it here first. The casual highlight. Preston Guy of TigerBait.com. Thank you, sir, for doing this, for coming on. Man, we appreciate you. Definitely dropping that LSU knowledge. Check out his articles, TigerBait.com. Any last words for us, Preston?
Yeah, man. Look, if y'all like good YouTube videos, go pop on over. Now that you finished this little podcast here, pop on over to TigerBait.com. It's just TigerBait.com YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, hit that bell. I'm live every Tuesday. We have a show every Wednesday night as well with Mike and Buddy, who also do a good job. And then I do my post-game show on Saturdays after the game. So y'all go check us out there. Check me out, TigerBait.com, for some good writing stuff. Do the game stories and a few columns and recruiting updates. And if you like Twitter, go follow me on Twitter or whatever social medium you prefer to use at pguy_77.
Awesome. Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning in to this edition of the Casual Highlight. Till next time, God is love and disrespect your senses.